At the end of this meeting, we will go into executive session to discuss legal strategy and purchase or lease of real estate. We will not reconvene. Looking for timekeeper volunteers. Keep us on schedule.
I'm ready and willing.
All right, Jess, you got it. One question for the board as far as scheduling. We have a OML presentation prepared by Sheila. Sheila, how much time do you need for that?
I would say 10 minutes or less.
Okay, I'd like to suggest we put that at the end, right after the executive, right after the chair business and before committees. And I'll give you 10 minutes there.
Okay.
All right, any other adjustments to the agenda? Hearing none. Anyone for public comment?
I've not received any. I'm not sure if there's anyone on who would like to make a public comment.
Hearing none, we will move to the vote section of the meeting. We have votes scheduled for 2 minutes approvals, a vote to approve the teachers memorandum of agreement for the teachers union, and a vote on the executive director evaluation. So we'll start with the reviewing the minutes from the 20th August meeting.
Is it too soon to say I move to approve the minutes of the August 20th meeting?
It is not too soon.
I assume everybody reads them when we get them.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Sheila. Roll call vote will be in the usual order. Raul.
Yes.
Jill.
Yes.
Kristen.
Mute.
Kristen, you're on mute?
Yep.
I heard a yes. Liz.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
Yes. Samini.
Yes.
Jess.
Yes.
Maura.
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
Roger, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Next is the approval of the minutes for the September 3rd special meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of the special third meeting about sports.
I'll second.
Second
Liz.
from Liz. Roll call vote. Raul.
Yes.
Jill.
Yes.
Kristen.
Yes.
Liz.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
Samini.
You're on mute.
Yes.
Jess.
Yes.
Maura.
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
Roger, yes. Motion passes unanimously. And thank
Hi,
you.
Padma.
And thank you, Sarah, for pulling the notes together, the meeting minutes together. That's a challenging job. Next up is to discuss and vote on the 2020 Memorandum of Agreement, or MOA, as I'll be saying it going forward, with our teachers union. Ellen, did you want to say something at this point, or would you like me to introduce this?
You feel free to introduce this. This was has been discussed in detail at our executive session, so I don't think there's anything new here at all.
All right. Yeah. So this is a 1 year. Basically, this is summarizing a 1 year contract with our teachers union that was negotiated between the task force of the board, Ellen, the administration, and our teachers union. And this document as attached is the summary of that agreement.
And it's been voted on by the teachers and approved
And
by the
the
teachers.
teachers have agreed to it. And the last step of this, the next step in this process is for us to discuss and vote on it. And then it will be memorialized into an official contract. And that's just like the final, this is the big piece. These two votes are the big part, and then they will take the words and make it into an official contract and be done. Any discussion?
Well, I would just like to thank everyone that worked on putting that together, because this year must have been even more trying than ever. Always putting a contract together is trying, but with everything that's going on, my hat's off to everybody that was involved in this, and I think it's a good job.
Well, thank you. So I'd like to recognize the task force, which was myself and Jill and Sheila were the board members who were on the negotiation task force. Other discussion or comments? Roll call vote. Starting with Raul.
Yes, I don't know if we need a motion. Second.
Yeah, we should. Sorry, I
I move
like to make
to
a-
approve. Yeah, move to approve and
Raul. I need a second, please.
I'll second
Second.
that, Sheila.
Ooh, second from
Raoul
Sheila.
moved, Sheila seconded.
Yes. Raul,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Samini,
Yes.
Jess. I think the proper approach is to abstain.
I was just going to ask if I needed to abstain, but thank you all for working on this project, and the teachers do appreciate it.
Thank you, Jess. Jess is abstaining. Maura,
Yes.
Sheila,
This seems frozen.
Yeah. Either that or she's very, very still.
I just say a little silent wish that if I
texting is also a viable option of voting. Ben,
Yes. You hear me? Yes.
yes, I did hear it.
Okay, sorry.
Cindy,
Yes.
Roger, yes. Sheila, are you there?
I think she popped out. She may be trying to come back in again.
Why don't we put that? Well, since Sheila is a member of the negotiating committee that agreed to this contract, she is required to vote yes, because she was part of the task force, and I believe that was her intent anyway. So
Come back to it until she comes back on.
yeah, I think we can postpone that and come back till she is online. So next up, we'd like to turn the floor over to Liz to discuss the executive director evaluation for the 2019-2020 school year.
Okay, and I didn't prepare anything because I didn't know that this was, I obviously didn't look at the agenda till the last minute. So, but I will let you know, you did all receive it. I think overall, as you can see, Ms. Lindsay had an exceptional year, and we're obviously very pleased with everything that has been done between the COVID as well as the charter renewal, as well as kicking off the 2020 school year, although technically not covered, but it certainly, since she spent the whole summer working on it, I think it falls within this. But you're able to read through it. It's going into the official documents. And I guess right now I would just say, is there anyone with any questions or concerns? Okay, then with that, we will put it into the official meeting minutes, and we can go ahead and take a motion for a vote.
I'd like to defer on the motion for the vote in the hopes that Sheila will be able to join us.
Got it. Yep. Okay.
Has anyone reached out to her to see if she's having any
Knows that
issues?
she's gone.
Yeah, it seems like she should have kind of popped in here.
So Sarah, would you be able to text Sheila and see if she's able to join us or what challenges she's having?
I've got it too. Oh, there she just popped in.
You just have to ask.
There she is. Okay.
Hey Sheila, welcome
Hello,
back.
sorry about that. I hope you didn't hear the bad word I said right when my connection dropped out.
No, we didn't hear anything from you.
Okay.
So,
I recorded it in the minutes. Don't worry, Sheila.
Yeah.
It's all recorded live on Facebook. So
You need
Already
backing
sent
up,
it to the Bar Association.
so backing up, we were in the midst of a vote to approve the teachers' memorandum of agreement.
So I would vote yes on that.
All right, and that motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to the teachers, to the administration, to the board members. I think it was, in challenging times, it was a very good agreement.
I agree. I echo that. Thank you for all the board members who participated, for our administrative team, Mike Naraki and Leanna McLaren, and overall to our teachers and the group that they put together that negotiated with us, and the relationships and the trust that we've been able to build over years. It showed during this time of a global pandemic that we were able to come together and work together and create something that that will get us through this year and hopefully into better years to come. So let's send a public thank you out to all our staff, and hope that that we have better days ahead of us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next vote is, I'm looking for a motion to approve the ED evaluation.
So move.
Second.
Moved by, the second was
Laura.
Maura. All right. Any further discussion? No discussion. Raul,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Samini,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes. If
Maura.
I'm allowed to vote. Am I allowed to vote on this?
I would think so.
Your discretion.
All right, I'm voting yes then.
Maura,
Yes.
Sheila,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Roger. Yes, motion passes unanimously. Congratulations on a year well done.
Thank you. And once again, thanks to all of you who participated and filled out the questionnaire, for all your feedback, and much appreciated too. And thank you to everyone for that. Thank you.
All right, with that, I'd like to pass the baton to Ellen to talk about, provide the executive director report.
Going to have a special guest join me for the end of the report. We're going to talk a little bit about a question that Sheila had about discipline and the data towards the end. I'm just letting Mr. Montesian know that I'm getting ready to start. I am going to share my screen, and he'll be joining us shortly. Do you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, this is kind of nifty, but you know, some things change here with Zoom, and typically I will show that, and maybe you'll show up a little bit on the edge, a few of you, but tonight you're all spread across my, 24-inch screen here, which is nice because I can see you and I can see the screen at the same time. So anyway, that's really a nice addition, nice little update. So anyway, welcome to all of you to our September 24th Board of Trustees meeting. And hopefully I have some interesting information to share with you tonight. So we're going to start with a little razzle-dazzle time. So we have a few things to showcase of what's happened in the first few weeks of school. And we did a quick little survey with some of the staff to get some feedback on how week 1 went. We're going to talk about that. A quick little update on the diversity and anti-racism work that we have started. And also to take a quick look at the 2019 AP summary. And we're going to be looking at the same, so we're looking at apples and apples over the years, the same data that I presented last year and Anders presented the 2 years prior to that. And we're going to, so at least we have more comparable information. So little Mike Finkel, could you please allow Mr. Montesian into the waiting room, out of the waiting room? Are we having the same problem? He said he's using the link that Sarah sent out.
Cindy said she had to keep hitting it or keep trying after a while. Maybe he needs to just do it a time or two.
Okay.
Yeah, I kept hitting the same link and it just kept telling me I was in the waiting room, but then finally you all showed up. So there it went.
Okay. All right, I'm going to suggest that he try the link that in the calendar, because I use that without a problem. Okay, a little razzle-dazzle time here we'll start with. All right, so I'm calling this the textbook miracle. Absolutely an amazing effort by so many folks on our administrative staff and some of our teachers too helped out and pitched in with this. First, we took in thousands and thousands of textbooks, and then we let them isolate in the school. And then a group of staff members took individual student schedules and put together bags of books for each one of them and labeled them with the student's name on it. You can see that that they're putting books together. Those bags were a donation. 1,000 canvas bags were donated by Quest Diagnostics. And thanks to Mark Vital for even thinking to ask Quest for those bags, and to obviously Quest Diagnostics for the donation. But you can see now this is just the lower school building, and there was even actually more bags that were in the upper school cafeteria as well. And what the parents did was they just came through, they gave us their student's name, that we had an assembly line set up, and that assembly line of folks would go into the cafeteria, find the student's name, alphabetical order by grade, bring it right back out to the car. So it was very effective, very efficient. We ran it for a couple days of taking books in and then sending books back out again. So it was just very, very exciting. Special thanks to Lynn McCluskey and the deans who spent so much time thinking about what was the best way to do this. And even though this was a lot of work and time and hours that went into this, it was really the most organized and efficient way I think that we could have done it. Also to our receptionists who spent many, many, many hours. Our school nurses were involved too, who helped make this process really, really it went very smoothly. We're very happy. I want to talk a little bit about our remote learning. Obviously, we're off and running now. Many of you have children in the school, and so it's exciting to finally have the program off the ground. And so Mr. Frinkle sent out an email to some families to see if we could get some pictures of what their children's experience looks like at home. And he has had an overwhelming response to that. And I absolutely loved this little sign that one of the families made. Said, quiet online school in session with little hearts and stars on it from 7:50 to 2:45. And that comes to us from Grafton, Mass, which they're saying is an AMSA satellite location. I thought that was absolutely adorable. And here's some of our students. Gosh, I just love seeing these pictures of these kids. Look at their happy faces. The one on the furthest left tray, he's one of our seniors, looking very serious there, getting ready for his day. And then just some just happy faces. And if you're interested in looking at some more of these photos, some of them have their cats in it and their dogs, and the parents have really gone to great lengths to make sure that their students have a little private spot to do work. But there's more photos on the Facebook page if you're interested. I'm going to hop right in here to the Pulse survey. One of the things that I've mentioned before is that Mark Vital is our feedback coordinator, and so he's collecting feedback from all around. It will be parents and students eventually, but I wanted to do a quick week one survey with the staff just to find out how people were feeling. It was a stressful 3 weeks of professional development work that everyone did. It was exhausting. The week prior to the school starting was, you could feel the pressure building as we got closer. It was almost like waiting for a liftoff of a space shuttle, and so I wanted to get a feel for how people were really feeling. So we asked two very simple questions that we're hoping would give us just kind of a quick little bit of information, and then we had two text boxes. The first question was, overall, how would you rate your first week? And it was 5 was fantastic, and 1 was absolutely unbearable. We're happy to report that there were no 1s. There were some 2s, a small percentage, but overwhelmingly, actually 96.2% said that they had a 5, 4, or a 3 week. So to me, that was a very strong indication, as though it wasn't perfect. I don't want to give any impressions that it was perfect. There were certainly bumps in the first couple days. There was technology bumps but they never overwhelmed the system. And I think that was one of the strengths that we really showed in this first week, and even going into this week, as though we knew that they were going to be bumps, but nothing paralyzed us, and nothing shut us down. And it got better each and every day. In fact, Erica said that even the first day of school, that by B period, second period, that they were feeling pretty good about things. So that was great. The second question that we asked was, how optimistic do you feel about the weeks ahead? Optimism to me is hope, right? And that's a positive thing to measure, is, how are you feeling as we head into the weeks ahead? And once again, it was 5 was I'm very optimistic, and 1 was I'm not optimistic at all. We didn't have any 1s, and a small percentage of 2s, but for the most part, 96.1% rated that either a 3, 4, or 5, with 55.1% rating their optimism level as a 4. Once again, that feels very positive to me, especially when we were going into something that was a complete unknown. And I think one of the pieces of feedback that I got that was, I think, a good example of this was that I think we were all so kind of tense on that build-up, especially the few days beforehand. And then the first day happened, and it was like, oh, okay. And then the second day happened, and it was like, okay, I think we've got this. And I think Jess will talk to us a little bit more about this too. And then there was the question 3 and 4, and that's all it was. But question 3 was just a general text box for any kind of feedback anyone had. And the 4th was, what additional resources do you need? And I've looked at all the additional resources. There were some tech issues, tech questions that people had for resources. I put that list together for Erica, and she is addressing all of those. Some of it was that people were looking for like the document cameras, and it just so happens she got a whole new shipment of those in. So she'll make sure that she's sending out an email with what she has, hotspots and things like that for folks who need them. And I think that the biggest mention on kind of call for assistance is around remote learning assessments. How do you assess a student? How do you know that that you're giving them an assessment and that they are acting with the highest level of integrity and aren't using their phone? And how do you do that? And I have reached out to get some professional thoughts and help around that from Jana Joblin, who's a consultant that Rick Kamal donated to us this year. And so working with her to get some resources together for teachers around remote assessments, because I think that's the trickiest part where we are, especially for our AP teachers who are used to being able to do all those things in the moment. Okay, so that's just a quick snapshot of how people are feeling at the moment. We're going to be sending out the end of next week something very similar to our families and to the students to see how they feel if things are going. The next topic that I wanted to just update you on is the work that the diversity and equity work that we're doing with a consulting group called DEEP. This is their logo. I think this logo is very interesting to kind of think about. The idea is that as we kind of become more reflective and kind of do our own work and figure out where we are as people, that we begin to kind of grow in other ways. And I find their logo interesting. I wanted to share it with you. And so this is just some quick updates here on the AMSA diversity and anti-racism work that we've started. One of the things that, and I mentioned Dr. Dinesa Monte Jackson's name to you before, but one of the things that I appreciate about her program is that she talks a lot about belonging and the feeling of everyone feeling like they belong to a community. No matter the background that you come from, where you come from, the color of your skin, your culture, but that there's a place for you here within our community. And so we definitely did some work around belonging. And you may remember that before everyone went off for the summer, I sent out a group of us from the school got together as a collaborative group of teachers and admin, and we put together a list of different fiction, nonfiction, podcasts, essays, and videos and things, and all of you received that as well. And so what we did, we came back, Brianna put together some discussion questions, and we let everyone opt into a group that they wanted to participate in. And it was really fairly well balanced. And so we had about 83% of our staff participate in that exercise. We received a lot of positive feedback about that. I think that they were, it was important to us that people were able to kind of enter into that conversation in a place where they were comfortable. So there was a wide range of things that they could read or watch or listen to. And we were very, very happy. We had about 110 AMSA adults. So that exercise we did on August 28th. And as I mentioned, we did have a lot of positive feedback and emails from teachers. Just happy, I guess, to have a first kind of open small group discussion. I participated in one of the groups. There was 12 of us, and really it was great. It was a great experience. And And once again, our consultant's name, she came and she did a 3-hour workshop with our staff. We had nearly everyone that participated in that. That was on September 3rd. And then we are scheduled for a second professional development on December 14th. After receiving some feedback about the September 3rd workshop, and these are tough topics, right? These are really difficult to lead these kinds of discussions, very sensitive in a lot of different ways, but very, very important work, and we're very committed to it. But I would maybe looking at something for December that's very practical to the day-to-day life of AMSA, and perhaps looking at some of the stories that have been published online about what have our students experienced, and you know, kind of shifting the conversation just a little bit to some more AMSA specific happenings and what we can do to become better as a school community. Brianna, Mike, and I met with Darnisa to talk about some vision and goal setting. We have not completed that process. That was just an initial hour-and-a-half conversation that we had. And so we'll be getting some feedback and some summary thoughts from Darnisa at the end of the week. And then she's also proposed that we have a board workshop for 2 hours. And I thought that possibly adding this into our Saturday, January 23rd work might be a good possibility. So that is, that's a proposed date out there. I mentioned at governance and talked to Raul and Roger about that earlier this evening. All right, so we're going to have a conversation about AP. During the board reports specifically, we don't typically get into specific exam scores and things like that. We can do that another time. This is really about talking about the spring AP exam that we had, and we spend time usually at the board meeting looking at the percentage of scores 3 and above, comparing that to, you know, state and global percentages, and we're going to take a look at that. But I wanted to take a minute to talk first about what was different about spring 2020 AP exams. And I have to say, and as you well know, it was almost everything. Almost everything was different. This year, we found ourselves in the middle of a educational crisis, along with a medical crisis in our country, and certainly in our state, what Massachusetts was going through last spring. And so really our AP teachers and our AP students had to turn on a dime and figure out how they were going to address this exam, something initially that they didn't even know the changes that were going to be put into place. It eventually became known that it was going to be just a 45-minute exam, and keeping in mind that most of these AP exams run anywhere from 2.5 to 4 hours. It was going to be squished down to 45 minutes, and it was going to be administered online in students' homes. And there was that changed things quite a bit, and there was a lot of changes in particular. Well, it was changes to every exam. They did, College Board did change the amount of curriculum. They reduced the amount of curriculum being covered in the different sections. And yet, as you all know, spring was just a completely different ball game. And
Ellen,
yes.
I think it also, one of the big changes was almost all the exams usually have a 2-part where there's multiple choice and free response, and there was no multiple choice in this particular exam. So, that's all of them.
That's right. And so as the last bullet says, it was a completely different structure than past years. And so the teachers were preparing students for a structure that many of them had been teaching for many years, only to be, you know, told weeks before the exam that it was going to be completely different. And one of the examples of that was our foreign language exams, and French is coming to mind in particular. We spend much of our time preparing for a verbal section, obviously, because that's part of the exam, but for cultural and writing, only to find out just a couple of weeks before the exam that it was only going to be speaking. And so that was, then obviously those foreign language teachers had to really go into a whole different focus for those last few weeks and trying to get the students ready. So if you're a student who's been working on their writing, that's not what they were going to be looking at. Now, what's really interesting, before I run to the next slide, was that although at AMSA we're very accustomed to having lots of 4s and lots of 5s, and to, for our scores to really be shockingly fantastic in most of our subjects, we were not, the scores were not necessarily in all subjects what we would have expected had it been a normal year. Okay, that said, and I know some of the teachers initially felt the impact of that when they saw their scores, but interestingly enough, although the scores weren't quite as high as we're used to in this crazy year that we were dealing with, our percentage of scores 3 and above was as high as it was in 2018. Okay, this is some interesting little data. This is a cut right out of the College Board report. You take a look at this. So typically in our accountability plan, our accountability to the state has been that our students would have, about 90% of our students would earn a 3 or above. This speaks to our access, because not only is it important to us that our students do well, but that as many students as want to take AP classes, that it's open to them. We want to have as many students involved as we can. So when you look at some of these numbers here, and so you can see, so our goal has been 90%. In 2018, we were over that at 92. We popped down to 89% last year, and this year, although maybe our averages weren't 4.5, 92% of our kids still passed that test and got a 3 or better, which I think under the circumstances is absolutely amazing. And I congratulate all of our students who participated in AP and all of our teachers for their hard work under unprecedented circumstances in a very, very difficult, stressful time, not only for our kids, but for our teachers, as we were all facing what was completely new territory in the spring. Just a couple of the interesting things to point out to you when you look at the school summary side of things. When you look at the number of exams, the 2016 column, the number of exams we administered was 584 exams with 291 students. It's for those of you who have been around for a while, you may remember the class of 2016 was the bubble class, right? They brought them in, and there was well over, I believe, 250 students. By the time, this was the year I actually came to AMSA, was in 2015, and so I was with these students. Samini had a student graduate in 2016. And so there was a huge senior class there, and there were many AP exams taken. And all of a sudden you jump up to 2020. Now the senior class this year is 134, is much smaller. But the number of total AP students is just 20 less than it was in 2016. And the number of exams was just 52 less. So many more of our students are taking more exams. And of course, we're looking at exams that they're taking between 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. But I think what we're seeing here is that our exams, our AP classes are accessible. And the number of students that are participating is high, which is what we want. And even under the circumstances that we had this year, and although maybe those scores weren't as high as they've been in the past, the percentage of students who earned a 3 and more was as high as it was in 2018, and I couldn't be more happy with the performance of our students, and happy for our teachers, because I know how much this means to them. They work so hard, and so do our kids, and they didn't know what to expect going into this exam, and I'm really proud of them and for what they were able to accomplish.
Can I ask a question, Ms. Lindsay?
Absolutely.
Actually, I'm interested in that trend around the access piece, and just That 584 number that you speak to with regard to the bubble class, very familiar with it. I think, as you mentioned, I had a kid graduate that same year. The 532, though, is very interesting to me, just given the fewer number of students in your class. It almost makes it seem like as if we're allowing for, or maybe enabling kids to take more APs in any given year. And I wanted to see if you have any data that speaks to that in your presentation, or can you just comment on it?
I don't specifically, but remembering too that it's 10th and 11th and 12th grade. So I mentioned the bubble class because that senior class was very, very large.
Okay.
But we've also done a better job of flattening out our numbers in the grades, where I think you would see in 2016 it might have been a little bit more consistent. That class was very, very large, but the junior class underneath it was not nearly as large. So I think that we could take a look at each year, but this isn't just how many exams were given to the 12th graders. It's 10th and 11th and 12th, and so you need to look at the size of each class during each one of the 5 years to be able to exactly see. And I don't have, I'm sure the data is out there. It's probably on College Board as well, of how many from each, how many of those exams, how does that break down between 10th, 11th, and 12th graders? But I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mini, are you asking of the 532, like when a kid graduates, do we have one kid taking 25 exams, or do we have 25 kids taking one exam each?
Something like that. I'm just looking at the distribution and how we compare against other schools, because I mean that's been a long-standing question for AMSA on, you know, how many students have access to how many exams, and what that means for them as they enter their freshman through senior year. So,
Okay, thanks.
That is, and we've spent, you know, Anders and I spent many hours talking about that. And is there a way to look at that? The different high schools have such different policies on who on who they allow to take AP classes, and so I don't know if there's a way necessarily to say that one school has greater access over another. I worked at a school at one point that had AP, and that AP biology was actually a level in their 9th grade curriculum. So for us, all of our 9th graders take biology, and then they have the option during their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year to take AP bio, but it's over and above. And this particular school, the students could take, as 9th graders, AP bio as above an honors level bio. And so everyone has different policies in the way that they use AP exams. And so, and there are other schools that really restrict who they allow to take AP, and therefore, you know, that there isn't the greater, as great access as we hope to have. But they're also guaranteed very high scores that way.
I'm just giving a little time check.
Okay, sure. All right. And so then what I looked at was I took the 92% of our percentage of total AP scores with 3 or better. And then I pulled the scores, the Massachusetts and the global scores for each one of those exams. So I was trying to compare apples to apples. And what I found was, when I took the average across all the 18 exams that we administer, is that the average Massachusetts percentage of students earning a 3 or better was 77.21%, and globally 70.43%. And you can see that AMSA outperformed both when we are comparing scores for students who earn 3 and above. Once again, this was, I took each and every test and went on to College Board and looked at, you know, AMSA's percentage and Massachusetts percentage and the global percentage for each one of the tests, so that we were looking apples to apples on this. Oftentimes we talk in the board meetings about state rankings, and as of the 23rd, it had not been updated. The last time that the rankings for AP was updated was October of 2019. So I would expect if they're going to rank this year, that it won't be until next month. Okay, very quickly, we're going to introduce, this is our new Dean of Students. I added this picture there because I wasn't sure that all of you have had a chance to meet him. Mr. Montesian comes to us from Sizer Charter Schools. It's actually just Sizer School, but it is a charter school up in Fitchburg, which is actually the charter school that kind of raised me up. So I've known Mr. Montesian for quite some time. Happy to welcome him to AMSA. He can tell you, been doing this work for many, many years, and I think we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. And so, Mr. Montesian, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. All right, so this table is a version of the table that everyone would have seen in our annual report this past July. And it shows, obviously, our discipline data. However, it is from the 2018-2019 school year. I'll talk a little bit about why it's from that year. But the quick version, so this table, again, everyone should have seen this already, looks at our rates of suspension during that school year based on all these different subgroups that Desi tracks for. So if, Ellen, we can go to the next slide. So that table that goes into the annual report is actually taken directly from the Desi website. It's right from AMSA's school and district profile under the students tab. So if you were to go to the website, you would be able to pull this data every year for our school going all the way back to when AMSA opened. And that's the same for any other district in the state. And I already mentioned this report is intended to be used by Desi to track the use of suspension, both in school, out of school, and the emergency removal rates of that, and also any rates of school-based arrest. We haven't had any students arrested from AMSA, so that number is obviously 0. That data is populated by the annual school safety and discipline report that we have to submit to Desi every July. So that report's compiled each year by me and Dan Amaral, and every time we issue any sort of suspension for a student, there are a bunch of fields within our Rediker system that we have to fill out that are then transmitted to Desi and used to populate that report. So that information is coming from the SSDR, and it's also cross-referenced with our SIMS report, which is where you get all the race information, students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, and that information. So important to note, that data is lag data. That data is not released by Desi very quickly. So, for example, last year's data has not actually been published by Desi yet. They typically publish it in October or November of the following school year. And when you look at it in the annual report, the way that they have the annual report structured is that you will always get 1 year old data. So it will never be data from the previous school year. It will always be data from the 2 school years prior because of the lag in the publishing of that data. I don't know why Desi has it set up that way, but they have always done it like that. So I know that once folks saw that in July, there was some curiosity around why is this a year old? Well, that's why. That's the way they set that template up. I do want to talk a little bit about how students are counted. So if we go back to that slide, to the table. So you'll see here, they provide up top our total enrollment. So 982 students. That means every student who spent any school days at AMSA, whether they were there for a week, whether they were there for a month, they're counted in that total. It's not necessarily true that they were still there in June. So next to that, you'll see students disciplined. That is counting every individual student who was issued some sort of suspension from school, whether it's an in-school or an out-of-school suspension. Really important to note a few things about this. First of all, each student is only counted once. So it will never matter that a student might have been suspended 3 or 4 times. For the purposes of this piece of data, they're only counted 1 time in this category. The other thing to also be very aware of is that you'll see here on the left that you have ELLs, economically disadvantaged students, students with disabilities, and high needs. So a student can be in multiple categories at once. So even though they're only included once in the total, you may see the same student represented in multiple subgroups if they belong to those subgroups. So for example, a student with disabilities, so you'll see that in the 18-19 school year, 8 students out of 67 were subjected to some sort of suspension from school. That 8 is also included in the following category of 17 for high needs, because Desi categorizes high needs students as students who have disabilities, students who are economically disadvantaged, or students who are ELL. So that high needs category is a total of the students who comprise the 3 categories prior to it. However, you'll obviously see that those numbers don't add up to 17. It's because some students count multiple times in some categories and only once in others. And the same goes for the race information that you'll see down below. So next to that are the rates of in-school and out-of-school suspension, again, based off of those individual counts of individual students who were suspended from school. Under that, you'll see for AMSA, there's a lot of blank. You don't see rates published for African American or Black students, Hispanic students, multiple race students. You'll see all those are blank. That's because even though some students who fit into those categories were suspended, when the rate is calculated, the rate is so small. I think their threshold is less than 1%. If it's less than 1%, they don't actually publish the data because it's not really that helpful. So that's just a little bit more information about what this table is really telling us. So if we can go back to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit about Desi's metrics. So Desi does seek to identify districts that have significant disproportionate use of suspension, and they use all of the subgroups that you just saw listed on that table, and those are the subgroups that they track. So they track basically by race, by disability status. Those are their biggest ones, and then they may look at ELL or students who are economically disadvantaged. Before I get into that, I just want to be super clear. AMSA is not an identified district by Desi, and AMSA is actually likely very far away from ever running into a problem with Desi at this point. So they identify districts to receive what they call technical assistance if you have disproportionate use of suspension. So what's the metrics they use? Well, if it's a student with a disability, they will use basically they will take your rate and compare it to the state average. And if your rate is 5 times higher than the state average for multiple years in a row, they will then identify you as a district having significant disproportionality in the use of suspension from school. They use a different metric for race. If it's race, even if it's for a single year, they may identify you if you are outside of 2 standard deviations of the statewide average rate. You also need to be, your aggregate rate also must be higher than the statewide average in order to be identified based on a racially based disproportionality for suspension. So it's a really high threshold that a school has to meet in order to be targeted by Desi as requiring corrective action due to their rates of suspension. And we are not really near there. It's really hard to know because Desi does not publish the state average. They don't tell us what the state averages are. We can look up the state rate. That's actually also on the school district profile website. You can just go to the state as a whole and get rates, but you don't get the averages. So it's really hard to know for sure. But I worked in a school previously that was identified, and their rates were, up at the 26%. And again, if you look at our rates, we're very, very, very low. So we don't have last school year's data. So if we go to the next slide, I do have some preliminary numbers. So in the 1920 school year, a total of 27 individual suspensions were issued by either myself or Dan Amaral. And that includes both in-school or out-of-school suspension. Those 27 suspensions only represent 25 individual students out of 962, which is a reduction from the 18-19 school year where 35 individual students were suspended. So we don't have the SSDR data. They've not released it at this point, but we did reduce our use of suspension from the previous school year. The thing to keep in mind is our enrollment also was lower, so those numbers, might not go down as much as one might expect, given that we saw a 10-student reduction, because it's going to be calculated based on our enrollment of 966, not 982. But that is just some very preliminary data from 1920. I don't think AMSA is anywhere near trouble territory with any of this, but it's certainly something that we keep an eye on. So one of the things that myself, Dan Amaral, and Brianna Murphy did last year was met monthly to review even just the classroom referral data. Are we seeing any disproportionate uses of even just referrals to the office for students who might have a disability or might be on a 504 plan? And we're actually found that where we have no disproportionality there, our rate is consistent with our enrollment, which is really great. And that is, I believe, it for me, unless anyone has questions.
Anthony. Sheila, did you have any questions?
Yeah, and I thank you so much, Mr. Montesian, because this is really helpful. I am the reason that you're probably having to present this tonight, and that's only because I agree with you. I don't think we'll ever approach that level that would cause us to be targeted or highlighted by the department. However, I do think, it merits just some discussion about where we're at. And I think your explanation cleared up a lot of, my questions. So I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, because it does help answer a lot of what I didn't know when I was looking at that table. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Anthony, thank you once again for being here tonight. And Sheila, anytime you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to Anthony. He'll be
Hey,
happy.
Ellen, I just want to say
Sure.
I want to say thanks to Anthony as well, because he just presented. He wasn't even here in 2018, 2019. So thanks for presenting on a year that you weren't even here for. So.
And that's great. Any other questions about any of this? Okay. All right. And then my last slide is that although Tom, I'm sorry. Roger, please jump in.
Yeah, if you could go back to the AP slide.
Yes. Which one?
Yeah, I guess this one or the next one, either forward one or two, either one would be fine. So I think it's really great. We're opening up our, part of our goal is to
access,
open it up to access. But I think I'd also like, maybe it's a topic for another board meeting, is to talk about academic excellence as well. To talk about, look at our percentage of 4s and 5s.
Well, Roger, I think we've had a lot of conversations around this, and I think that this spring, and absolutely, that's always a part of our conversation, but this spring was about survival and about helping our kids to do the best that they could do under, incredibly difficult circumstances. Excellence is always part of it, but this year, when we had students, families, teachers worried about a pandemic and teaching from their homes for the first time, it wasn't necessarily about the 4s and 5s this year. We knew that those scores were not going to be as high. I was actually thrilled to see that we had all those 3s and above, and that our percentage on those 3s was so high, because everything, the whole landscape of AP changed, and our teachers were riding a wave on this. And there were so many unknowns going through this process that, honestly, I think the scores that we got, especially when you look at, against the state and the global scores, was remarkable considering what we were facing. And I think in years going, but this year also is going to be a very difficult year. The teachers are teaching AP in a whole new way, and they're very worried about it. I've spoken to a number of them. They're taking all of the AP curriculum. They don't even know how much of it, because College Board hasn't told them, and they're trying to squish it into 50 classes. Once again, that is something that no AP teacher has ever had to do before. And I think we're going to see the same thing. They're going to do the best they can, but they don't even know exactly how they'll be teaching and under what model over the next 9 months. So they're working, so hard and putting so much thought into this, and having to redesign their whole AP curriculum to try to squish as much as they can into this remote learning atmosphere. So the excellence is always there, but on March 11th, 2020, our lives changed, and so did AP. We had colleges that decided not going to count AP, they're not going to look at AP. We had some of our top students decide that they weren't going to take AP. So there was a number of those situations. I hear what you're saying. Academic excellence is always a priority. But this past spring, it was survival. And I'm really impressed with the work that our kids did and our teachers did to help our kids to pass this test when they were going into it blind. They had no idea what this test was going to look like when they turned on that computer. So excellence is always going to be a target and a goal for us. But last year and this year, we're fighting to do the best we can.
I think, yeah, I agree that this last year was totally different. They changed the rules, everything changed. But I do think that all the school districts face the same challenge. We are not alone in facing this challenge, so I still think the data is relevant, but needs a huge asterisk on it to say this data is not comparable to anything previous. But I still think looking at the data from the lens of excellence is valuable.
And I agree, but when you look at our AP scores over and above the average for Massachusetts, we're almost 15%. Our students who scored 3 and higher was 15% higher than Massachusetts and almost 22% higher than the global.
Right.
That to me, that says that they did a great job.
Clearly, we're doing great on access. We're doing great on this. What would help me would be, did we score all 3s and no 4s and 5s? That would, or did we score all 5s and all 1s? Both of them would show up as 15% above. So maybe a little more deep dive in a follow-on session to say, what's the distribution of our 3s, 4s, and 5s versus other schools?
I'm not sure it breaks down for other schools. I have that data for our school.
5s versus the previous year, something like that. We can take it offline to see, or maybe discuss with Liz Saul to see what sort of things we should be looking at.
Well, that's certainly, if the Ed Committee wants to take a look at all of that, that's fine. This is the same data that's been presented for the last 4 years. And so I kept the same format that we've been presenting in the board meetings. But if you would like to look further, we can talk about that.
Excellent. That answered my question. Thank you. Other questions?
No. And just then a little pitch for the Patriots, because we're very excited about the football season, and although we didn't win last week, I have great faith in Cam, and I'm very excited about what I'm seeing so far. So hopefully, I know Jess is watching this along with me, and so anyway, just a little pitch to the encouragement to the Patriots. And
My Steelers are 2-0. Ben's back. Woohoo!
And that's the end of my presentation.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Next up, Jess, faculty report, faculty rep report.
Hi, everyone. I will try and stay in my 10 minutes, but usually I kind of just do it with little notes on the side, but I actually put it into a little thing that I'm going to share with you. So let's see if this works. It'll be so embarrassing if it doesn't after I'm just telling you I've just done a couple good weeks of teaching online, but let's see what we got here. Can you see my screen? Oh, yay. I'm so competent. just mildly competent, just enough to get by. Okay. So what I did is I always try and reach out to the staff. I put faculty report, but actually sometimes staff members report to me too. And I'm not really a union representative, so I take feedback from really anybody who will give it to me. And I took snippets of them of a survey that I sent out, and I actually put it in here in their own words. And I tried to pick words that I kept seeing the same themes coming up. I actually heard from over 20 faculty members, which is kind of unusual. I'm like lucky to beg for 3 on a good week. So I heard from a lot of staff members, and for the most part, I would say the vast majority of the feedback that people really wanted to share with me was overwhelmingly positive. I kind of asked people to categorize what's good, what's been good about the launch of the new school year and your feelings, what are some of the challenges and barriers and fears that you're facing, and then sort of open-ended, what do you want the board to know? And I would say the vast majority was positive. So you'll see the other stuff, but in terms of weight, yeah. So here's some of the good stuff. I thought things went very well. We did a lot of work in both trainings and on our own to be ready for the technology we'd be using. It wasn't always perfect, but I believe we have the tools we need. Hat tip to Erica. She's a rock star. Erica, if you don't know, is the head of, she's the IT director. That's such a helpful resource for us. Also, Ellen and Mike have hit COVID home runs throughout this thing. Feedback from kids is this is much better than the spring. So again, this was kind of themes that I heard from lots of people. And the next one, while engagement does seem to be difficult, overall the students have been positive and doing the work and things have been going smoothly. It's kind of nice using old technology in new ways and new technology as well. Other positive themes that I heard, a lot of people shouting out to their colleagues. The English department got a lot of love. Erica got tons of love. Just everybody kind of helping each other behind the scenes. Padma Jabindara was like a hero. A lot of good stuff about the technology, both the software that AMSA has acquired, the Nearpod got a lot of mentions. The Zoom, rather than using Google Meet, using the Google Classroom in a more widespread platform. That was something that some teachers use, but not everyone. And also AMSA has really been great for teachers if we need hardware. So most of us now have another monitor. I'm looking at my presentation and all of your faces. That is super, super helpful. Getting document cameras. I used my document camera today, drawing some econ graphs for the first time. So those, and they've been really good about reaching out. Ellen said that they can get teachers actual hotspots if people have wireless issues. So all of those things people mentioned. And generally people said, you know what, there were bumps, but they were generally minor bumps, things that you kind of deal with, and really no one mentioned major catastrophes. So, you know, when we were kind of ready to launch, it did feel like you just don't know if while you're live in front of a group of people you're trying to impress, if the whole thing is going to fall apart in front of you. And that really didn't happen for the most part. Most teachers felt like, you know, a little thing here or there went a little not quite as good as you wanted. But I tried to launch a Google Jamboard and then like the permissions weren't set right and I couldn't get it to work. But you know what, we solve it and we kind of move on. So here are some of the sort of concerns, fears, worries, things that I think are helpful for us to see where we can continue to improve. The most significant challenge we face is technology equity issue. I've had several occurrences in my classes where some students, because of their Wi-Fi, they come in choppy, they can't participate. Some of them have a hard time turning their cameras on and off was one thing I heard. I only hear a certain amount of voices and don't have the ability to quickly access my students. I talked to Ellen about this and she said that we can get students hotspots, but parents might not know that their students are having issues. Students might not even know that they're coming in warbly in a meeting. So getting everybody to know what the problem is and who's having problems and getting them the help that we do have the ability to get them might be a communication challenge that we can solve. I think grading and assessment, Ellen mentioned this. I think this is really something that teachers are concerned about and haven't really found great solutions that they love. Everyone is at home. Every kid has access to phones and internet and other people and back channels. So I think a lot of the assessment concerns people have are around integrity and assessments. How do we know if people are cheating or not? I think for AP teachers, of which I am one, it's my responsibility to prep these kids to take that exam at the end of the year that will have multiple choice questions and free response questions. But giving multiple choice tests seems really tricky online. I don't know what materials they have in front of them. I don't know if they're sharing answers. I want to trust them, but as soon as I do trust them, you have people who take advantage of that, especially in a world where your GPA is high stakes. These kids are taking AP classes. They want to get good grades. We are incentivizing them to get good grades, and that is really tricky. And it punishes the kids who are acting with integrity. And that's something that I think AP teachers really are concerned about. We want a process that reflects what kids are honestly producing in a way that has integrity. A lot of teachers said that they're moving to more project-based assessments, more participation-based assessments, and I think in some levels and some grades, that's a really effective tool, but I think this assessment thing is going to be something that we're going to continue to struggle with, and that teachers are just we're improvising, we're recognizing that it comes with some, there's some things we can't control. We kind of are in a position that we really kind of have to give open notes exams. Having kids test on camera feels weird. That's what we have to do. There's a lot of issues, and nobody has really found perfect solutions yet. We're getting better. There are Google Forms. You can put timers on them. You can lock browsers, but the technological things involved in that can be tricky. Another thing I heard over and over again, and I didn't write this, but I could have, I'm so exhausted all the time just trying to keep up with everything online, emails, curriculum changes, that I'm terrified this isn't sustainable with sleep and sanity wise. All the little things that would normally happen automatically or quickly or in person, they take longer to do remotely. Just a quick homework check. If you have your systems in place in the before times, now is like a huge task to kind of manage all of these little things. We're also teaching longer blocks of time. So some teachers found prepping a lesson plan for 70 minutes is a little different than 45 minutes. I heard from other teachers, though, who are loving the 70 minutes. So some teachers are like, oh, I'm going to be scared to go back to 45 minutes. Well, we can talk about that a little bit later. But I'm putting in so much prep time that it's hard to time for grading and meeting and things like that, and sleep. So we all kind of feel like we're first year teachers again, and I've heard people say that your first year or two teaching is like being a resident in medical school. It's exhausting and you're learning everything, and usually there's just a few new teachers and everybody kind of takes them under their wing and looks out for them, and you have other people there. But now we're kind of all there together. All of our lesson plans have to be rebuilt from scratch, with using techniques and new things that we are just inexperienced at. We will get better. We can already feel it, like the second week felt better than the first week, but it's stressful. And I think sometimes it can appear to the community that we are working less. The kids are in class fewer minutes. And so and they're not in class on this Monday. And so it seems like teachers perhaps are watching Days of Our Lives and eating bonbons. But so a lot of teachers are like, I want the board to know how exhausted we are and how much work it is to teach fewer minutes. So we do have fewer minutes. A lot of teachers are feeling like I still have to complete the same amount of curriculum. I have fewer minutes to do it. We started school 3 weeks late. We have about 60% fewer minutes in each week, depending on how you count the academic time. So that is something that teachers are just, they're like, I'm hanging on now, but that's going to kind of build. Teachers had the sense that their instruction felt less rich than it does in person in learning. And engagement continues to be something that's going to challenge teachers. I think some of the higher level kids are a little bit easier to engage. I think lower level kids have a harder time with that. And you have fewer tools at your disposal to really help kind of reach those kids. Teachers we're helping each other and looking for strategies to continue to do that. I did make the point that if you make a joke in an online class, no one laughs at you, and it is like bombing at open mic night and the comedy night, and you just kind of look at the blank screen. A friend of mine online said he got himself a laugh track button. I'll look into that. So here's some thoughts about what else the board should know. a lot of love and appreciation from the Monday Flex Day. You probably, because a lot of that work happens behind the scenes, it might look like it's a day off. I assure you that it is not a day off. I really appreciate being able to have the time to work on curriculum, modify lessons to be remote friendly, and thankful for the time helping prevent burnout, helping with the grading. Because I'm doing a lot more like daily grades and participating, so keeping up with that rather than a fewer bigger grades. So they want you to know that. Here's another one. Zoom classes are just exhausting than in person. It's also harder when you're on Zoom. When I'm in my own classroom, I feel really comfortable saying to the kids, all right, now you do this work. And in a Zoom class, I feel I've tried to let myself go on this, but there's a lot of pressure for me to just be running it and talking all the time. I find myself at the end, like having to remind myself, take a breath. A mention here of the buildings before we can go back, updated HVAC and windows that open, teachers talking to other teachers in other school districts, sort of saying that those are issues. And before I hit the last one, I did get feedback. Ms. Lindsay mentioned the racism training. I did get feedback. A lot of people had really positive responses at that at the training, but I did hear from a few people who had less than positive feedback, and I'm going to share with you this teacher's exact words. But this teacher is not the only one who came to me with similar thoughts. I think that there is a group of people who is a small group of faculty members, but it's not one person and it's not insignificant. So I'm going to read actually this teacher's words to you word for word. I very much dislike the anti-racism training that we've been forced to sit through. Over the course of the past year, we've had 4 racial sensitivity trainings and there is another slated for December. The final training was a sermon delivered by a neo-Marxist left-wing activist masquerading as a diversity trainer, an anti-racism consultant named Dr. Darnisa Armanti Jackson. The seminar was entitled AMSA's Reckoning, Understanding the Systems. Come December, after we have had our second session with Dr. Jackson, we will have attended 5 diversity trainings in the span of less than a year and a half. Why? Apparently, there have been numerous isolated racial incidents that have taken place at the school over the years. Incidents spanning the gamut from actual racism to insensitivity to nothing burgers, often committed by rude middle schoolers. And because of that, we, the teachers, have to sit through extremely divisive trainings that forward a radical form of left-wing identity politics that is vindictive, illiberal, intolerant, ineffective, data-free, and that is born of a hip new philosophy called critical race theory. Critical race theory, which is so radical that it is currently banned within government agencies, advances the view that any disparity in outcome between groups is evidence of racial oppression and sees the world in a Manichaean fashion, breaking people into tribal identity groups warring for power. For example, at Dr. Jackson's most recent training, we were taught how to unpack systems of oppression before learning that systems of racism are interlocking and interconnecting. We learned about the 4 I's of systemic oppression, which included commentary on how to fix our internalized privilege and avoid microaggressions. We were taught that one of the 4 I's of oppression is ideology, specifically the ideology of whiteness, white privilege, white supremacy, and systemic oppression. Apparently, the definition of oppression is that white people equals bad. At the end of the seminar, we were asked to engage in silent reflection and think about the following questions. What water have you swallowed? And can you think of ways you've benefited from institutional systems? So I wanted to share that with you, and I'm not going to really kind of make any commentary on that, but I think that it's important that you hear that viewpoint. And that's all I have. Does anyone have questions for me?
Hey, just a couple of comments having to do with the Zoom comments that you shared. If I mean, I'm sure people know this, but if students are having issues with internet connectivity for a Zoom call, you can always dial in if they have phone access. So yes, the video might be choppy, but when they participate or when they hear the teacher, it will come straight through the phone, and that wouldn't be affected by slow internet access. So that's something worth making sure everybody's aware of. And
that's a good thing to add to communication to families. Good point, Raul.
And then the other comment you mentioned, you wanted the board to know that it's exhausting to be on Zoom calls. I don't know of how many board members I can speak for besides myself, but we know. You know, we've all been working remotely for the last 6 months, so feel your pain, absolutely.
Thanks, Raul.
Other questions for Jess?
And Jess, I don't know if you saw, but AMSA did send out, or Mike Finkel did send out a remote learning contact list, and it, directs parents and students to the IT website if they have problems, and then they created a list. So if you're having any troubles, they did send out. I printed it out so that we have it.
I have my printout here.
Oh, good.
I have a little thing that I keep by me. Yep. So I think teachers were not concerned about their own. I think most teachers are managing their own connectivity. I think they're concerned about their students' connectivity and their students coming in and out in voice. And just, I think that's really where the teacher concern is, making sure that students are connected enough that teachers can connect with them.
Right. And I think that this email that Mike Finkel sent out to the parents and the students was to help them if they're having issues, to address them. So hopefully all the students have that info.
I think when I talked to Ellen, we talked about maybe students or teachers having a way to let the IT department know if they have students who consistently seem to kind of be having struggling issues, because those students might not want to, they might feel uncomfortable saying, Mom, it's not working, or, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So just making sure that we find ways to get everybody what they need, I think, is really the issue here.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, it's Kristen. Based on that very last statement that Jess shared with us, wondering if it makes sense for the board to have access to the materials that were presented at the trainings so that we can see and understand what that means. I'm sure a lot of it was in-person commentary, which is very difficult to replicate, but it would be helpful to see the materials.
She did share her slides with us, so I'm sure Ellen can share that with you.
Yep.
And I can share this report with you too as well.
That would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, Jess, if you can send your report to Sarah so we can add it to the minutes.
Yep, will do.
Excellent. Last questions for Jess? On to Maura for parent report.
Thanks, Roger. So I do have a couple of emails that came in with some concerns that parents have, and I know we have a resource to kind of submit concerns and questions to the school directly. But I'll go ahead and share these, and if we have answers, it would be great to get them. I can either respond back if you want to go through me separately, or we can just kind of address them quickly. First and foremost, questions around homework. Homework due at odd hours and on the weekends, and then some same day assignments. So assignments due the same day that they've been given out. And I think a lot of the concerns that I've heard, and some of the ones I have, are that our kids, and yes, Raul, like the Zoom fatigue, totally. Like I teach and work now online, so it's like, but our kids are on at 7:50, and my oldest, I go to bed before she's off. And she's pretty disciplined and not goofing around all the time. So I definitely see, and I think a lot of that is beginning of the year stress and wanting to do well and do the right thing and, kind of follow the rules. But other parents are kind of letting me know I'm not completely crazy on that one. So the questions come up around, could there be standard times of day when assignments are due? And then potentially, since we have the academic workshop on Mondays and the way that Mondays are structured, would that be a time, instead of having things due on Sunday night, giving the kids a little bit of a break and maybe having them due on Monday? Because now we have this time to be able to, reach out to teachers, where a lot of students might feel uncomfortable over the weekend reaching out with questions on assignments that are due Sunday night. And, Monday is kind of a little more structured for that. So those were also another kind of homework-ish question was the amount of printing. I've heard a lot of concerns. I know, thank God I run a business and I have a business printer here at the house, but not everybody is in that position. And sort of the print on the fly that we've kind of received a little bit of, and and printing like entire collections of short stories so that we can annotate. There may be, and I've kind of gotten some suggestions, but haven't tried it out, but just alternatives of using some of the resources in Google Classrooms for annotation. And maybe there are some ways we can adapt a little bit. And I know it's hard. I'm a pen and paper kind of girl myself. And I know that especially when you're kind of used to doing things a certain way, it's much easier to have it printed. But just, I don't know if in some classes there are alternatives. I know it's hard. And, you know, as someone who teaches too, it's really hard to flip these resources around in a different scenario. So that's a concern that's out there. Shifting gears a little bit over to the buildings and kind of remote to hybrid to full capacity status. Got a question about the status of the HVAC study and if there are existing already, or will there be guidelines for moving to hybrid? And if and when there are, can parents kind of get in on that, just so I think mentally we can be prepared for what it might look like?
So can I jump back to the homework? Or do you want me to? Okay, so it was interesting. That just popped up, was it today or yesterday, about that academic workshop would happen. And there was some asks to, okay, you didn't finish this now. So it was classwork that didn't get finished, and then asking him to finish it at 4 or 6. So that's something that's just popped on our radar, and we're going to address that. In fact, we've put some of that onto the department chair meeting for Monday. Mike, I see you turned your mic off. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was going to help you out. Maura, just so you know, you didn't mention this, but another very similar concern popped up regarding student athletes. So we do have, I think, around 50 to 75 student athletes on the cross country team, and also I think 9 on the golf team. And there was some concern with the academic workshop assignments. You know, a deadline, if you did not complete the assignment, the deadline would be 4 or 6 p.m. But our student athletes are actually commuting right after school to Marlboro or to AMSA to practice, train, compete, etc. And then they commute back home, and it's not possible for them to meet the deadlines. So a very similar scenario than compared to what you brought up. So we are on top of that, and we'll be discussing with the department chairs, like Ellen said. So there'll be more information on that.
That one just came up, and we will also talk about the printing is a new one, but that makes sense. I'm like you, Maura. I print out everything that I get, and I'm writing on it. So we will address that as well. But I was surprised. To me, in fact, Jess and I talked about this earlier. To me, if you don't finish something, then it becomes homework. And that doesn't mean it's due in 2 hours. It's homework if you have the night to do it. As far as the HVAC system is concerned, just got an update from Eric, actually. We had to put that out for bid. We have hired someone now. We have our estimate, and they are going to be scheduling something out for within the next couple weeks. So that process will happen. It has not happened yet, but it's a little longer process for a public institution. But we do have our company. We have hired them, and they will start doing that work. And
is this the assessment or the remediation of?
Oh no, they haven't even done the assessment yet. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's taken this long to hire a company that they'll come in and they'll do the airflow assessment first, okay. And then we'll get a report at some point too. So we're waiting for that, and that Eric's been pushing that forward as quickly as he can through the process. As far as, we've kind of done that same shift in our minds more. It's like, okay, this is up and running. Our remote system is up and running. And then all of a sudden, within like 2 days, Mike and Brianna and I looked at each other and said, okay, now we have to start thinking about next steps. And what does that mean, and how does that impact things? I'm sure most of you are local folks, and that Marlboro turned red last night. So that's certainly a concern. We're going to be watching that very closely. And the way that works is they recommend watching it for 3 weeks. If Marlboro continues to stay red, you don't have the option of going to a hybrid system. A town that is red and red for 3 weeks in a row needs to stay remote. If you're yellow, you have the option of a hybrid or a remote system. If you're gray or green, then they recommend in-person learning for as many students as you can get into the classroom with social distancing. So some of that is outlined by the state. So we're going to need to continue to watch that. When you look at the numbers of cases in Marlboro, they have kind of continued to increase, especially over the last few weeks. And so we're watching that very closely.
Okay. Thank you. That answers a lot of the questions. And I think that people are definitely sort of in that same mode as you guys are, but from a different perspective.
Sure, absolutely. We're all looking ahead, and no one really knows. We do have a family forum that's scheduled in October. I think it's October 8th, 6 o'clock. And then there's another one scheduled for November 4th. And that one is also at 6 o'clock, and they'll both be recorded. And I'm hoping that by that November 4th one, we've got some rolling data here to look at. And then by then, hopefully, we'll have the report back on the HVAC system as well. So we should have some more information to work with by then.
Okay, excellent.
Hey, Ellen, real quick, this is Ben. I know I mentioned this maybe 2 meetings ago, but have we done anything around the parent support system that I kind of mentioned things, how to provide parents with more of the support that kind of what the teachers got for the last 3 weeks in terms of professional development? Is there any initiatives going on with that at all?
Oh yeah, Mike Finkel's done an absolutely beautiful job on our back to school pages. And if you go onto the website, onto the back to school sections, you're going to see there's training videos for parents on how to use Zoom and how to use Google Classroom and the Guardian. And so there's actually a lot of resources there. All the manuals and schedules and calendars and all of that is there as well, along with those teacher central pages where they can go into the directory, click on the teacher's name, and go right into a separate page that each teacher has set up for each one of their classes. That may have a link to a PDF of the textbook, to get into the Google Classroom, to get into their Zoom link, all kinds of things there.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
You're welcome. And Mike Finkel just put the link in the.
Awesome.
Other questions for Maura?
I just got one last minute email, and it basically mimicked the same thing. Another kind of vote for Monday night, end of Monday assignments being due, and then another thought on sort of screen time and just that they need that break. I know that I miss volleyball practices. And really hope we have basketball practices, because we all need that sanity check in our house.
Then we all need to encourage the folks of Marlboro to social distance, use their masks, and stay home when they can.
Yeah. Agreed.
And keep their kids home.
All right. That does. I believe we are ready for chair business, and I'd like to turn the floor over to Liz to talk about diversity and inclusion exercise.
Helps to unmute myself. So I sent all of you a PDF file this afternoon, and hopefully you were able to follow instructions and not open it ahead of time. It wasn't meant to be to have any sort of pre-work, but if you could open up that PDF file, and what you're going to find is there's a quiz there, and we're going to spend about 5 minutes taking the quiz. And then what I'd like to do is just go through a brief discussion, and we'll go through each of the questions and see how people answered them, and sort of see how many you got right. And I will preface this whole exercise by telling you, on average, people are probably only going to get 2 or 3 answers right. Don't feel bad if you don't. So get more. So I know, many of us want to be perfect, but this is a case where you may learn more from what you don't know than what you do know. So if you want to just go ahead and open the PDF file and take the quiz, and I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes, and then I'll check back in with you in 5 minutes. Does anyone have any questions before we get started?
Do we have to like submit the answers to you? Is this like, I
No,
just think like a
actually,
teacher.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Basically, what you're going to do is just answer it yourself, and then I'm actually going to pull up whoever's on my screen and ask you to read the question and your answer, and then we're actually going to do a poll of how many people selected each answer. Hopefully that makes sense.
So write them down, but you don't have to give them to Liz.
Correct. Just write them down for your own purpose, or highlight them. Don't even print them out. Just highlight them, bold them, star them, whatever you want to do. It's so quiet. Maybe I should have put some music on or something. Very unusual.
You can just tell bad jokes that no one laughs at. That's what I like to do.
Does anybody need more time? Okay. So if you are able to turn on your camera, because it will be easier if we can do a show of hands, or you can just do an agreement in the chat if you can't turn on your camera. Just to give you a little background, I had looked at a number of different exercises around sort of diversity and equity, and a lot of them really required you to be in person. So that's one of the reasons why I ended up selecting this. But some of what this illustrates is just about how some of our perceptions of reality and facts that we may gain through media or education or other sources, they just might be either limited in depth or possibly wrong. So that's really all we're trying to sort of get at with this exercise. And hopefully, we all may go away just learning a few things from it as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go take whoever's on my screen, who I can see, and I'm just going to ask you to read the question and your answer, and then we're going to poll to see how many people answered that same question, answered the same way, and sort of how many different answers we have. So the first person I have is Roger. So Roger, do you want to just go ahead and read the first one? And come off mute?
Yes. Shuffling windows here on my computer as well.
Yeah.
Number one, 50% of people in state prisons for drug offenses in the U.S. are African American. What percentage of illicit drug users in the U.S. are African American? And I chose one, I picked B as in boy, 28.
Okay. And how many other people picked B? 1, 2, so we have 3 Bs. Did anyone pick A? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 A's. C's. 1 C. And D's. Any D's? Okay. All right. So just so you know, the answer is actually A. So although 57% of the people in state prison for drug offenses are African Americans, only 14% of African Americans are actually drug users. So again, just an interesting fact for everyone to consider. The next question, number 2, and the next person on my screen is Mara. Do you want to go ahead and take that one, Mara?
Sure. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, 34 anti-Muslim organizations were operating in the U.S. in 2015. How many were operating in the U.S. in 2016? I picked C.
C. Okay. And how many picked C? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. How many picked A? 0. How many picked B? 1. And how many picked D? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, and so the answer there is C. So we actually had a good amount of right answers. So number 3, question number 3, and the next person I have is Jess Bowen. Jess, you're up. And you're on mute.
According to GLSEN, what percentage of students who report an incident of homophobia at school say the school did nothing in response or told them to ignore it? I went with D.
Okay. And how many people answered D? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. And any for A? Okay. B? 1, 2.
I was also D, Liz. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. And any for C? 1. Okay.
Liz, later I'll show you how you can set this up as a Kahoot. The kids love it.
Yes, I know, I'm sure, but yeah, it's too late in the day for me to Kahoot. Sorry. Yes, so the answer is actually 11. Sorry, the answer is actually D, 64. So 11 of you had it right. Number 4, and next is Sheila Kelly. So I'm going to have Sheila do the next one.
All right. U.S. Census data shows that African American and Latino women earn how much for every dollar a white man earns? And I chose D, 54 cents and 49 cents respectively.
Okay. How many selected D? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. How many selected C? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. How many selected B? And A? Okay. So actually the answer was C. So we actually had a good amount of people who got that one right. And question number 5, actually it's to Raul. You're up.
The Service Women's Action Network has reported that women serving in Iraq and Afghanistan are less likely to have been killed by an enemy than they are to have been. And I think I answered this wishful thinking, maybe a little afraid of what the real answer is, but I said B.
Okay. How many answered B? Okay. How many answered C? Okay. And how many answered A? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, and unfortunately, those 11 people are correct. It is A. Mike Naraki, you are up next. Number 6.
Yep. I'm reading from my phone, so bear with me.
Yep.
According to the Center for American Progress, compared with schools attended by at least 90% white students, those attended by at least 90% students of color spend how much less per pupil annually? And I went with B, $733.
Okay, how many people selected B? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. How many selected A? All right. And how many selected C? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And actually on the answer on that one was B. So it was actually right in the middle. Still pretty sad. Number 7 is going to Cindy.
There we go. Okay. Oh, when I unmuted, I lost my my other screen. Hang on, I'll bring it back up. Where'd it go?
Okay.
I moved my whatever you call it. I had it pick somebody else. I'll get it by the next one.
Okay. So Mimi, do you mind going?
Sure.
Okay.
You said number 7, correct?
Number 7, correct.
About 5% of the world's people live in the United States. About what percentage of people currently in prison live in the United States? And I picked B, 25%.
Okay. How many selected B? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many selected A? 2, 2. How many selected C? 1, 2, 3, 4. And D? 1, 2, 2. Okay. So the answer on that one is actually 25% B. So that was correct. Cindy, do you want us to go back to you? Okay,
I got it.
go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 8, in a study conducted by the National Bureau of Economic Research, researchers replied to help wanted ads by sending resumes from fictitious applicants. Each applicant had the same qualifications, but some had stereotypically African American sounding names, while others had stereotypically white sounding names. How much more likely were applicants with stereotypically white names to get a callback regarding their applications than applicants with stereotypically black names? And I went with C, 39% more likely.
Okay, and how many also thought C? 1, 2, so we get 3 there. Okay, how many thought A? 0. How many thought B? 1, 2. And how many thought D? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, D is the answer on that one. So, good job to that group. Let me see. Nick, you are up next with number 9.
Identify the source of this quote. We have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew and prospered out of the Protestant ethic of hard work and sacrifices. Capitalism was built on the exploitation of black slaves and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both black and white, both here and abroad. I went with C.
Okay. How many chose C? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. How many chose B? 1, 2, 3. Okay. And how many chose A? 1, 2. Okay. So the answer on that one was actually C. So it was Martin Luther King. And the last one, everyone else will get out of having to read through one, but Ben Hamill, you are up next. And you're on mute, just FYI. I can't tell if he's reading to himself.
Ben, you're on mute.
Ben, you're on mute.
Yeah?
Okay, now you. I couldn't tell if you were just reading through it to prepare.
Oh, no. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, the median household income in the U.S. has increased 16% since 1980. During the same period, corporate profits after taxes increased 182%. The average income for the wealthiest 1% of the families increased 190%, and the average income for the wealthiest 0.01% of the families grew 322%. What happened to the average income of the poorest 90% during that time? I picked B as in boy, increased 0.03%.
Okay. Anyone else pick B? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Anyone pick A? Okay. And anyone pick C? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Okay. Good news, bad news is B is the correct answer. So it didn't decrease, but it barely increased. So, so just out of curiosity, looking at your overall scores, did anyone get perfect scores? Oh, Jess, did you keep everybody's score? Or just yours? Okay. She was holding up her score, so I couldn't tell. All right, did anybody get 9 correct? 8. So we had 1 at 8. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 people have
Liz, I
given
had,
yeah.
Liz, I had 8. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So we have 2 at 8. So 6 at 7. How many had 6 right? Five. 4. 3. 2. Up. Row. Was that 3 or 2? Okay.
3.
2. Anyone? 1? Anyone?
I think we can agree I was the worst student in this.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there was no studying ahead of time, and I appreciated if you all waited. I think the overall, for me, when I was looking through it, for me, it was just more of an awareness. And, it's kind of funny because I think that, it's always a challenge how we consume information and where we find it, where we choose to, what we choose to believe, what we choose to not believe. And the media it doesn't matter who you're listening to. I think that it does tend to slant things. And I did recently see a picture of sort of where you can find sort of the most middle of the road media outlets, which I personally find to be very helpful, because whenever you hear that story that's skewed one way or the other, it's always good to kind of go back to that, whatever your personal reliable source is, and really kind of figure out what the right answer is. So I think that's always helpful. Again, this was just meant to be informational. Is there anything that anyone particularly took away from it? Any surprises, anything you learned that anyone would like to share? Okay, that's fine. I get it. It's late.
Yeah, Liz, just
Yes.
one comment, because there was a mix of different topics, and each one of these topics has a lot of complex issues behind it, and that's why this is not an easy conversation. I think we all well, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I understood the challenges exist in this country particularly, and those topics are areas that I would think are challenges. I guess what is awareness, like you say, is what is the size of that problem, which is just acknowledging that the problem exists. I guess where the discussion is worth to be had is how do we solve that problem, how do we help influence that problem. I think that's different than saying, oh, we don't have that problem at the school, or we don't have that problem in our community or in our backyard. But those are, I think, a little bit different discussions. But at the end of the day, if it's something that the country as a whole is suffering and we're not aware of it, awareness is the first step. So
And Raul, I would completely agree with that sentiment. I think that a lot of times, if you haven't seen it firsthand, if you haven't experienced it, you don't think that the problem exists. But just because something hasn't happened to me personally or someone else, I think I know that it takes place, and I know that it can be a concern. And I will tell you that just my own personal experience last summer, my nephew came and stayed with us for 7 weeks. And I have to say, I was concerned because he's Kenyan and he's not familiar with the United States. I was concerned about what his experience was going to be like. Fortunately, my son and his friends were all very good to him, and I don't think there was anything negative because he ended up coming back for Christmas with his brother and parents. So, but I think that, that as someone who hasn't experienced anything sort of racially charged personally, not to say that I haven't experienced, gender related issues or other related issues. I think that was definitely a concern of mine for him. And it's a concern of mine for a lot of my friends especially whose sons are either of African descent or African Americans. Any other comments, questions? All right, Roger, I'll pass it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Liz. Very, very thought-provoking survey. Last piece of chair business. Actually, we'll turn it to Raul. We're looking to appoint a survey task force of the board members for the 2021 school year. Raul, did you want to take the lead on that survey task force again and recruit some members?
So this is where I give you my pitch for the survey task force. So first of all, I'll officially and we'll be happy to continue to volunteer to be part of that. And I think we have it down to a science, which I think is good. And it's why we remember to put it in this board agenda because we have thought about it in the past and the right timing for it. Before I ask who's interested in being part of the task force, let me share real quick since we're sharing stuff on the screen. This is the document that we put together, I think it was last year, for what the process. By the way, can you guys see my screen? Yes, okay. And then basically, I'm not going to go through it, but it spells out the process and the steps that we're going to follow to put together both surveys. So as you may remember, we have a fall survey and a spring survey. And there's, well, technically two surveys, the staff and faculty survey and then the family surveys. So we established a survey task force for both timelines, but of course the first task will be to start preparing for the fall survey. And the timing of the actual survey, as we try to shoot for, is for it to be open in the first couple of weeks of November, so to be closed right before the Thanksgiving break. So that would be the first thing we work towards. So it's, I'd say, an interesting task. One of the reasons I decided to volunteer for this, and I believe it was the first year in the board, is because as an external participant from the board, and I don't have a students yet in the school, and I don't participate in the day-to-day of the school, I thought it was a good way for me to get a feeling about what was going on in the school and how parents and the staff feel about the school. So I had definitely get a lot from reading through the surveys and helping tabulate and even discussing the questions that we ask. So I think if those kinds of things are important to you and you want to stay close to what the feedback is from the community, this is definitely something worthwhile participating. I would say that we had our meetings had some snacks and wine back when we got together for these discussions, but I don't know if I can offer that until we're out of quarantine, but it's definitely a plus. So with that, I mean, I haven't spoken to anybody one-on-one on this, so I'll just, if anybody's interested, either speak up now, and we can, I don't know if we have to decide, Roger, today who are the members or appoint them today, but
well, I think we should try to we can always add more members if people would wish to volunteer now. I would willing to start with a beginning task force, and we can expand it if needed.
I thought I was on the task force before, although I don't remember a lot of wine, but I'm happy to serve either again or starting now.
yes, thank you. You'll be welcome. I'll send you a bottle of wine.
Donations gladly accepted.
I will serve again.
Thank you.
I'll volunteer, Raul. That was a good idea about those of us who don't have kids in the school and don't have that prior connection. So.
Excellent.
Jill, was that you who volunteered?
Yes, Cindy, Jill, and Jess.
All right. I'd like to appoint the four. Well, thank you for volunteering. I'd like to appoint that group of four. Raul.
Well, and Ellen, normally that also includes Lynn. So, I mean, I don't want to volunteer her, but yes, all right.
No, she always helps. That's not a problem.
So that would be a 5 if you had Lynn.
Well, it's a 4 from the board level. There's
Right, correct. 4 board members.
4 board members. That's the part that I appoint. You can work with Ellen to get the appropriate administration support for your task.
Excellent.
And it's been a great resource for that.
All right. I'll follow up an email to the task force and we'll figure out next steps.
Fantastic. Look forward to the 2 surveys. With that, I'd like to I'll offer up 2 things. I could either take a 2-minute break for people to stretch their legs or go right into the OML presentation. I defer to the group as to what their choices are.
2-minute break.
All right.
While we're taking that break, Mike, could you help me with my getting my presentation up?
Sure. So why don't we resume give it 5 minutes just so people can. So we'll start the presentation at 8:22 and we'll do the technical consulting in the 5 minutes between there. All right, Sheila, the floor is yours.
All right. So I know at 8:24, everyone is dying to hear a lawyer talk about open meeting law. So I'm going to make this as succinct as we can. So if you go forward 1 slide, please, Mike. So just to give you an overview of what open meeting law, what the goal is. So the goal is to make sure that public boards, public agencies are transparent in their meeting process, that we allow the public access to the meetings of public bodies. And just in case anyone had any doubts, the Board of Trustees is unquestionably a public body per open meeting law. And as trustees, each of us has a responsibility to understand and abide by the open meeting law. Go forward. So the big questions are, what meetings are covered by open meeting laws? So any meeting where there's deliberation with respect to a matter within our jurisdiction. And deliberation, just to be clear, can be through any medium. So it can be through email, it can be on a Zoom meeting, it can be live, it can be over the phone. So if you're not sure if what you're doing, what is subject to open meeting law, you want to ask yourself these questions. Are there communications between us as board members? And if so, there's a typo there, I apologize, the communication deliberative? And does the communication involve a matter within our jurisdiction? And a matter within our jurisdiction is anything that a quorum of the board could make a decision or a recommendation on. So if you're questioning whether it's something within our jurisdiction, that's kind of your guideline for that. And if it is any of those things, is there any exception to open meeting law, which we'll talk about in a minute. Next slide, please. So the exceptions are an on-site inspection of a project or program, a conference, a training program, or an event that board members attend, a meeting of another public body. So if we were to go to some kind of meeting in one of our core towns, or a meeting of a quasi-judicial board or commission that's not subject to open meeting law. And also town meetings, because they're actually subject to a different set of regulations. So the caveat to that is we still can't deliberate in any of those settings. So if we were to go to visit a program and we started deliberating on something within our jurisdiction, we're violating open meeting law. So we do have to be careful about that. Next slide, please. So other areas to note, notice. So part of open meeting law requires us to provide notice within 48 hours, not counting weekends or holidays, in advance of a meeting. And that notice is, in our case, where we're kind of a region, that notice is provided to each of our district communities, which Sarah does a fantastic job with that. And also accessibility, that our meetings are subject to the Americans with Disability Act and to all state accessibility laws. If we were to have a member of the public want to attend or public comment that had some kind of accessibility issue, we would accommodate that. Next slide, please. So then we have executive session. So what are our rules around executive session? It must be after an open session is called to order. And we must give a reason, like Roger does at the beginning of our meeting, stating why we intend to go into executive session and whether or not we'll reconvene after the executive session. And there must be a roll call vote to go into executive session, which we're very good about doing. Next slide, please. So why can we go into executive session? There are actually 10 reasons. We only really use 3, but I threw a couple others in here too, to discuss the reputation, character, condition, or competence of an individual that we need to discuss negotiations with union or non-union personnel, another typo, sorry about that, to discuss litigation that's pending or that might be forthcoming, to consider the purchase, lease, exchange, or value of any property if the chair declares that an open meeting would be detrimental to that discussion, due to the fact that it could compromise our ability to negotiate. And to discuss interview applicants for employment or appointment would be another reason to go into executive session. Next slide, please. So pre-pandemic, right, the before times, as I've started to call them, we had to limit our remote participation. There had to be a live quorum. Live attendance was definitely recommended unless there was some unreasonable difficulty in getting somewhere there live. You just had surgery or you're in a cast or, there's some reason. During this global pandemic time, that rule has been set aside to allow for meetings like this where we're all on Zoom. Next slide, please. And the public participation. So members of the public are permitted to attend an open meeting, but they may not address a meeting without the permission of the chair. And if a member of the public is disruptive or violative of the rules we've set, then they can be removed by the chair. And if they do not go gracefully, they can be, there's very lovely language about calling a constable or a bailiff or a law enforcement officer to remove them if it came to that. Hopefully we will never reach that level in any of our board meetings, but good to know. Next slide, please. Minutes. So minutes have to include certain information, which we usually do: the date, time, place, attendance, the votes, a summary of our discussions, any documents we use, which is why it's good someone asked for Jess's slides before, which was great, and the names of anyone remotely participating, which we always put in. They have to be approved in a timely manner, which the regulations put as at least within the next 3 meetings or 30 days, whichever comes later we have. And executive session minutes are kept, but they are private and not disclosed until disclosure would no longer defeat the purpose of the executive session. And we are obligated by the regulations to review those minutes periodically, which I know Roger and Jill have been working on. Next slide, please. So questions, complaints. The regulations changed in the last several years to give the Attorney General's office oversight of open meeting law compliance. So they actually have an entire division, the Open Government Division of the AGO, which is in charge of taking complaints and looking into violations of open meeting law. So if anyone has any issues, they can reach out to that particular division. All the information is there, including their online information. So if you're ever interested, there's a lot of, if you ever have questions about it, there's a lot of resources on the AGO's website dealing with open meeting regulations. So that's kind of your quick and dirty overview of open meeting law. Does anyone have any questions? I will say, having reviewed the regulations again, and looked at the materials that are out there, I really do think we do a good job as a board being mindful in our committee meetings, in our board meetings, about complying with this law. So I think we do a very good job, but I do think it is important for us to kind of refresh and understand what our obligations are individually and as a body. Any questions?
I have a question, Sheila.
Yes,
what's the easiest go-to place to look at, the Q&A, right? It's the FAQs, I guess. When can we, it's the what should, I feel like we're always debating, okay, can we talk about this? Can't we talk about this? Can we do that? Like, is there a particular place we can go to with more detail than kind of the summary stuff that we see all the time?
So I do think there's some good resources on that bottom website, the mass.gov/AGO/open meeting. But honestly, I do also think if there was something that you were particularly concerned about, contacting the Division of Open Government at that phone number would be assistive as well. Like they will provide some assistance with that. But there are some FAQs and some other resources for board members or body members and officials on that AGO website as well.
For board members, I would recommend that you, if you had a question, to first reach out to the governance chair.
And that would be me.
As your first question.
Yeah. Anything else?
I just want to say this was really helpful. Thanks, Sheila.
You're welcome. And I talked fast and went under time for you, Roger, trying to get us back on track.
Thank you, Sheila. And I'll second the online. I've read the online things multiple times, and they keep evolving. They've always been good, and they keep getting better. So if you have questions, the MassGov open meeting law guidelines are really good. All right, committee reports, starting with education. Liz.
Don't worry, I was just talking to myself. So the Ed Committee did meet this month. Sarah was our special guest for the month, and she went over the accountability report with us. And the only thing that really came out of it was that we did request that for the next go round of the accountability report, that the Ed Committee is just has the opportunity to review it and ask any questions before it goes to the board for its final approval. So that was something that we did discuss with Sarah. Chances are I will not be around the next time it happens. But I do think one of our members will still be here because she still has a couple kids left in the school. So the onus is on her to make sure that happens. And the other thing that we did just cover this time, and we will actually going forward, Mike and Brianna have been keeping us updated on this, the plans for the school opening and that sort of thing. So we're going to have that as a standing meeting agenda item at least through November, and it'll continue until we no longer deem it necessary. But they've been doing a great job keeping us updated on what's going on there. Any questions?
Did you make progress on SMART goals?
So we did not, because the back to school planning was so important that we ended up covering that for well beyond. But it is our first agenda item for October. But technically, the accountability plan was one of our SMART goals. So technically, we can check that one off the list.
Thank you, Liz. And
yeah.
All other chairs, I will please include a comment on your progress towards SMART goals during your report as well. Other questions for Liz? Ben, development.
All right, can everyone hear me this time?
Yep.
All right, cool. So we met again this 2 weeks ago now, and what we basically did was we started putting slides together about our development committee strategy. In that strategy, we broke down into 4 sub-strategies, giving you a sneak peek into what you'll see at the next board meeting, where we go into more depth about these. But basically, each of us on the board, on the development committee, took a different one of these options: corporate, family, alumni, and community, and we looked into what does that mean in terms of their own development strategy around those topics. We each broke into different sections: how to research, reach out, explore. We had to identify, and both local, regional, national entities that relate to the different topics. And then we started breaking down to what are our measures for success, right? So we started going through, what do we need to, how many organizations do we need to engage in our particular areas? How many presentations should we do? What's our financial goal, and how are we going to track those donations? And then we also correlated that to a calendar of events. So we took our each individual topics and broke it down by calendars and figured out what activities we'll do in those particular areas. So that's just a quick sneak peek of what we did, but that was a great effort by the team to come together and choose these and then dig deeper into each one of them. And like I said, in our next meeting, we'll go over each one of these and give you a little more insight into what's going on. For our SMART goals, that's what I was alluding to here. For each one of ours, we had key measures of success, and then we even took those measurements of success and tied them to a time frame over the next 12 months so that we could report back on a regular basis on our progress towards those. And that's pretty much get us back on track too, Roger. That's all I was going to talk about today for the Development Committee. Does anybody have any questions about this strategy or any feedback?
Any questions? No questions. Thank you, Ben. Great work, Development Committee. Governance, Sheila.
Hi. So we met in governance and had a long discussion about how we are both helping with the goal setting and also kind of tracking the history and the kind of progression of things so that we don't lose information in the balance. And Salmini actually came up with some great ideas about how we can do that and capture that and keep it. So I know she has reached out to the other board chairs to talk to them about where their goals are at too. So we're working on finalizing that with all the different committees. And that's kind of our big takeaway from this month. And so I very much appreciate her work on that. It was really helpful and insightful.
Questions for Sheila? None. On to Kristen for finance.
Guess I should unmute myself before I share. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Numbers? Okay, they were also attached to the agenda. Typical exciting finance committee meeting this week. We reviewed the results for July and August, and we had good news on the revenue tuition front this month. The first period update was positive, so therefore for the first 2 months we are $48,000 over our budget. We had a pretty flat budget so far in our draft budget, because remember we have not officially formalized the budget, but so far we are ahead, which is favorable, especially given the potential for additional cost if the school has to go back to in-person or hybrid. Grants on par. Leanna's done a really great job with grants this time around, going after all money she possibly can to cover these excess costs that we are and will incur. Next month, we'll have a rundown of the grants that she has been successful obtaining, as well as a list of the costs associated with COVID that are additional to normal operations for the school year. The other revenues and expenses are lower than planned. The plan was developed around a standard in-person operating model. As we know, we were somewhat favorable in the spring because costs were just lower in person, and we're seeing that same trend for the beginning of summer, for example, right? And we'll continue to see that probably for the next couple of months. No other really interesting or unusual items on the Finance Committee. We reviewed a purchasing policy. It was great. Leanna's been spending a significant amount of time on the audit as well, which is going good so far, as we know. And from a goals perspective, we do have our goals, two of which are one, to add another person to the Finance Committee with financial background. And the other notable item is to continue to work on the long-term financial plans of the business, of the school, which we know are important. given facilities and all the other items coming at us as we, move into the future. We want to be prepared and understand where our needs and demands are as various items come at us. So that's it for finance. Anybody have any questions? Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. And thank you, Liana, for setting this all up as well, for preparing the data that Kristen presented.
Question about the food services item and whether there are any families with meal plans or anything like that, and those services are provided through a different system. I wasn't sure because I've been seeing the other public schools sort of come through and say what they were doing, and I don't know what AMSA's obligations are.
So the district schools have been covering the students. So any students in Marlborough who want to get involved with the district food plans are able to do that. We've also put out lists for like in Clinton and Hudson and all the surrounding towns, places where food is being distributed. We're not under the government. We have, a private caterer that handles AMSA's food, and it's paid for by the parents, and then any of the free and reduced meals is actually paid for by the school and not by, rebated through the government.
Thank you, Ellen.
So when the state puts things out that says that they have extended free lunches and breakfast for all school kids, they don't mean our kids.
Mm-mm. No, they don't.
Well, that's nasty.
Yeah, we had actually applied for some assistance for some of our families. We were told initially that they were going to be able to get it through the EBT system, and after some of them even applied, we were then told that they actually didn't qualify.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, Mike Bergeron through the Marlborough Public Schools has been very generous, and he really believes that all Marlborough kids are all of our kids, and
right.
He's made sure that they were covered.
Was that in the summer as opposed to now?
I don't think probably that his program went through the summer, but he
something did in Marlborough.
Well, then
the buses were going.
He may have continued through the summer then.
Yeah, I saw school buses delivering food.
He probably did.
Yeah. But they couldn't do that now because they're not going to have school buses bring food over to AMSA from Marlborough.
They weren't actually. They ran it through the school bus system, so through the routes.
Okay. Huh. Interesting. All right. Okay. Thank you.
The kids could also go to the school and pick up meals.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for committee chairs? Meeting wrap up. So reviewing the agenda items from, let's just start by just reviewing our previous action items. We still have an open item for working on the investment policy. We're making some progress there. I have action item 2 is on hold still. Sounds like governance has made progress toward our board goals, but we're still working toward that. Jill and I are going to get together to review the executive session minutes. I think we'll expect to have a report out in the October meeting. And the committees are making great progress toward creating their own SMART goals. So those are the items that we had previously. Sarah, do you have action items, if any, that came up from this board meeting?
The only one I have is for Jess to send her presentation, her report to me. That was it.
Sarah, I already did that.
Excellent. Check. Like to check things off that list.
I don't know if this counts as an action item, but I'll follow up with the survey task force too. initiate the process.
Maybe this is an action item, maybe it's not, but back to the school lunch thing, that really bothers me that our kids aren't included in that. Is this something, Ellen, that we as individuals or we as a board should contact our local state representatives or state senators or something? It just doesn't seem right.
No, I understand. I think that it's probably a better topic because I can't give you all the details, Cindy, on it, and I'm just not that closely associated with the lunch program. I know Leanna is on the call. Eileen Hebert is our lunch coordinator, and I think they're probably your better source. I don't want to give you some wrong information on the ins and outs and the whys of AMSA and the meal program. I just know that we don't use the same funding system that are used in some schools. We don't have a kitchen. I think, there's probably a lot of factors that fall into that, and I don't know them.
Yeah, we actually opted out of the federal lunch program because as you know, we don't have, a kitchen that we can cook meals and things like that. So we have to go with an outside caterer, and the federal lunch program puts a lot of pressure, I guess is maybe not the right word, but they dictate pretty much like how many ounces of meat and how much vegetable and how much grain that you have. So it got to a point where we couldn't satisfy the needs of the vendor and satisfy the needs of the federal government. So it ended up that it was much better for us to opt out of the program.
How many years have we been out of the program, Lana?
Oh, probably 5, maybe.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lana.
So I think we have kept the new action item that's just for rules to reach out to the task force members to kickstart the survey process. On to meeting effectiveness. Anyone want to summarize what challenges we face, what things went well, what things we can do better?
We got a little off.
Aren't we?
Yeah, as the timekeeper, I can tell you we got a little bit off. The ED report went long. I think there was important stuff there, but there were a lot of questions, and so then that sort of set us back. But nice job, committee reports. You picked up the pace there and bought us back some of those minutes. So good job.
I would say just in general that the online meetings are really very helpful for me. I know how everybody else feels. I know I sit in front of a screen literally all day. So these days are really long to sit in front of a screen, but at the same time, I do have 3 screens. And so, I don't have to print the paper and I can have all the data, the agenda, the reports, everything at my fingertips. And I find it very convenient working remote for these meetings rather than being in person. I don't know how anybody else feels, and I really hope after we saw that open meeting law presentation that they allow this to continue like many other businesses and schools and everyone are thinking about allowing remote participation.
I agree. It makes it shorter because you don't have the commute back and forth to the building to have the meeting.
Yep.
And I don't usually drive well at night. The eyes are getting too old. So once we move into this, like right now, I'd have trouble driving home. So I like the remote. I keep telling myself, I know the way. It doesn't matter if I can't see, but that's probably not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
Really, Mike just sent me a text. Sheila, the 2 votes that we had on the handbook updates. I don't think
yes.
we voted on those.
We did not, and I apologize. I forgot to send those in for a vote. So
Right now, the handbook reads pending, updates pending board vote. We can keep it that way for another month if we need to.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's
And
okay.
Sarah, could we add that for next month's board meeting?
Yep. So Sarah, capture action item to vote on the handbooks. Is that a fair capture?
It's the civil rights section that was added, new federal law.
But it's
in
a
the state.
it's a small handbook. Is that what we're voting on?
Yeah. Yep. It's just a section that Michael Joyce updated.
Yeah. And just to be clear, we're discussing governance, but we have to bring it to the board for approval.
Right. So what I'm hearing is the governance has approved this, and it just needs
To come to the board, yes.
This needs to go to the board. Excellent. We can do that. One comment I'd have is that I think we're getting much more comfortable in presenting things online. That we've had a number of the chairs have presented presentations as part of their report. So I think we're getting much better at that. So I think that's been really good. And the other thing I'd like to throw out there is I do like the break somewhere in the middle of the meeting. Give everybody a 5-minute break. So I will continue that.
Agreed. Thanks, Roger.
I have a question, Roger. So sometimes the slide presentations are in the agenda and sometimes they're not. Do we want to consistently have anyone that's presenting a slide presentation to have it submitted to Sarah before the meeting so you can click on it in your agenda? And then also it would be accessible to the public too, because I think we're inconsistent in which presentations, are public and which presentations we're just discussing, but then they stay in someone's computer.
Well, in the end, I think in the end, all of the presentations are rolled up into the minutes and are made available to the public. But there's like a month. There can be a month delay in getting everything posted.
Actually, I usually send Mike Finkel everything but the approved minutes. All the documents, everything that was covered, the agenda, all goes to Mike within a day or two or so of the meeting, and then he posts them. Sometimes I've been later than that, but they usually get right up there. I think what happens with the presentations is in some cases people would prefer them not to be seen prior. I think they want to be able to show them, and then they send them to me. I think that has been, some people send them ahead, some people don't. So I think I don't know if there's something you can do that's standard with that.
Well, for people who wish to have their presentation available as part of the agenda, just send it to me, because then I build the agenda and can attach all the presentations right into the Board on Track agenda. That will get you into the board packet. And I think that would be for presentations for most presentations, I think that's a good best practice. And for anything that's presented at the meeting, either ad hoc or wanted to save for being able to explain the presentation while doing it. Well, for example, Liz's quiz, we clearly didn't want to be able to study for that ahead of time. Those should be sent to Sarah so that she can, items like that would be sent to Sarah after the meeting so that she can incorporate them and put them out into our public documents. Does that answer your question, Jill?
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
So the short answer is send things to me that you wish to have in the agenda and I will add them. And send things to Sarah that are post-meeting recording. All right. Anything else for meeting effectiveness? Things coming for October. And sort of carrying over from previous meetings, we approved the ED evaluation. Ideally in October, we will have approval of the ED goals. We will have also governance will have SMART goals for the board. Committees will have SMART goals. Some of them already have them. That if we get optimistically, we can review and approve the board goals for the year in October. We've already completed the check mark. Thank you, Sheila, for the open meeting law training. We've done the AP results. Ellen, when would SAT data be available?
Well, you just need to keep in mind that there was probably an SAT in January. I don't know if any SATs went off in March, but there was none in April, May, or June. Most of them have been canceled through the early fall as well.
Yeah.
So we
may not make sense to present it given everything.
Yeah, I mean the seniors have had a heck of a time finding an SAT.
All right, I would.
And same with ACT.
I would suggest that we postpone, not report on the SAT results, and just wait for things to return to normalcy and return next year to that topic. We have created the board survey task force, and we will, in the October meeting, we will have at the beginning of the meeting the auditor's report. So be prepared for lots of financials and discussion in October. Any other action items or upcoming events for October? All right. Hearing none, we are into the closing items. We're like to do a combined looking for we're going to like to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss the purchase or lease of facilities and legal strategy. And Ellen, you can help me out on the invitees beyond the board members. We're going to have Mike,
Leanna, Lisa is coming up.
Connor, yourself.
I think that's it.
Okay.
So move.
And we will be doing this in executive session because discussion in open session would be detrimental to our position.
I second it. It's Cindy.
All right, so this is a combined motion to adjourn the meeting and go into executive session. And I have so moved by Raul and second by Cindy. And we'll plan to enter executive session via separate link at 9:05. So with that, let me find my vote list here.
You should have a link, by the way, in your calendars.
Yes.
For executive
If anybody doesn't have a link, email to either Ellen or myself, and we can help you out.
Another very big positive, by the way, these Gmail meeting invites popping up with the links automatic. It's very good.
So if you use Gmail.
I guess that's true. Sorry.
All right. Raul.
Yes.
Jill.
Yes.
Kristen.
Yes.
Liz.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
Samini.
Yes.
Jess.
Yes.
Maura.
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
Roger. Yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We will reconvene in executive session in 5 minutes.